Now for our fourth and final storyteller, we go to Nepal. And we're going to hear from Curtis Palmer, who's with PACT. And Curtis will be sharing a story about how integration is able to give a voice to the most marginalised of populations after an emergency, and we are talking about the devastating Nepal earthquakes. Curtis, welcome.
Well, thank you, Leith, and thank you all for giving me the chance to talk a little bit about our work in Nepal and how it fits into our theme today of integrated development. Nepal is sandwiched between India and Tibet, China in the north. It goes from about 80 meters above sea level on the southern border up to more than 8,000 on the Himalayan mountain chain that divides it from Tibet. So that's a mountain chain that continues to grow. It's an active fault line, and earthquakes are a pretty regular feature of daily life. It's also an extraordinarily poor country. Last year's data has it at the 18th poorest country in the world, just behind or ahead, depending on how you see it, of Rwanda. Most people are subsistence farmers working on very small plots on largely roadless hillsides. I think we're a little bit ahead. So this just shows the limitations of my camera phone, but in the middle of that, there are 3 households that are actually too small to see and no obvious way to reach them, and they farm there. It's extraordinarily poor, it's extraordinarily corrupt. And what's interesting to note for our project is that it's also been 19 years since there were local elections. That's the regular development context, that's normal times. Now, last year, April and May of 2015, there were a series of devastating earthquakes. It killed 8,000 people outright and left another 1 million homeless. So within that already complicated and overlapping development context, we add this disaster relief and recovery element. And what becomes clear to us very quickly, and I think all of us in this room, given what we're talking about today, is that no siloed or single sectoral approach is going to be able to effectively address the concerns of those populations in such a complex environment. So perhaps counterintuitively, our answer to that was governance. Governance is not, let's see, okay. So governance is not perhaps as photogenic as some other interventions. All meetings kind of look the same. But we believe that in this kind of context, it's one of the only ways to make development and recovery more inclusive, to give people who are typically excluded from these kind of prioritization and development conversations a seat at the table, and to end up with sustainable results that are owned by the local community. Within governance, well, okay. What does that mean practically? Let's get practical. We are there in a facilitation role, primarily. We go to local communities. We try and initiate conversations that are really inclusive, that bring marginalized community members and women to the table to express their own priorities. It begins from the premise that people know better than I or someone from the capital city what their real needs are in terms of development and recovery. What we hope to come out of those meetings and those interactions is a prioritized list, not necessarily of the solutions, but of their development needs. And we can then take those needs and, on the basis of them, try to bring the, I mean, it could be anything that comes out of that. It could be infrastructure development, road construction, water systems. It could be different services that they need to bring to their community. It could be vaccination. It could be uterine prolapse camps. There's a lot of problems with cataracts. We do a lot of eye camps. It also could be things like skill training. Whatever the community brings to us as their need, we then go try and source that with the local government service providers and bring it to them. Within that, for example, if we have a health camp for uterine prolapse, we know that there'll be a lot of women, so we also try and make sure that there are people there who can advise them about reproductive health and contraception methods. If it's an eye camp, we're still in the eye camp. If it's an eye camp where we know there'll be a lot of children present, we can make sure that the district health officers, they are checking vaccination cards. There are these complementarities that we look for once we have the service confirmed that we're going to bring to them, or the infrastructure project. In terms of infrastructure, we establish implementing project committees at the local level, which we ensure have representation from women's groups and also from marginalized communities, who are charged with the stewardship of the implementation of that project, but then also are going to transition into being management committees when our support ends and those projects are handed over to the community. So we're simultaneously building the capacity of the people on those committees with the expectation that they're going to continue in that role. And for a lot of these folks, it's the first time that they've served on any kind of official body like that. So it's a big stepping stone, we hope. Let's make this even more concrete. I'd like to introduce you to Jasmaya Rana, who I met actually last week. We had gone into her community about a month prior. We had sat with the community, we had facilitated a series of meetings, and we came out of that meeting with a list that prioritized road reconstruction and identified a need for the replacement of key documents that people need in order to access compensation funding for the government for houses that have been destroyed. Primarily that's property deeds and citizenship certificates. So we took that list, we went back to the governor, we said, look, we need all of the officers that need to sign off on this kind of documentation to come with us for an integrated service camp that we're going to have in Yangtze Village. We did that, we did our advertising around this camp, and what we were expecting, based on the conversations that we had had, was that the people coming were going to be replacing citizenship certificates. What we found, in addition to those people, was Jasmaya Rana, who at 86 years old had never had any interaction with the government. Her birth had not been registered. She hadn't obtained a citizenship card, which meant that she couldn't access education. She couldn't go to the district health office. She couldn't apply for a pension or vote. And she walked up the hill. She came to the camp and said, I'm 86 years old. I've never had a citizenship card, but I hear I can get one today. So we brought her in, and what you see here is her putting her thumbprint in lieu of a signature into the official register to apply for her citizenship card. A few minutes later, she came out with it signed by the governor. And because this is an integrated service camp, we were able to take her to the next room where she was immediately added to the voter roll. So in addition to being able to apply for a pension in the same place, she's also able now to vote in elections when they take place, and we hope continue to guide the development of her community. I think we as an organization have a lot of experience and expertise in this, and it's something that we need to continue to build on to find strong partnerships and partners at the local level and make it easier for the government agencies that are actually the service providers to go out and do this in cooperation with us. That said, for me as an individual practitioner, one of the most important lessons that I take from this is the need to always be humble and remember that giving people the ability to prioritize their own development needs opens the door to these things that you would never expect and that we would never have foreseen if we just came in with a single sector. So thank you very much.